Good morning, everybody. Trial by jury is under attack in England and Wales. There is a new Justice Secretary with Keir Starmer's Labour government regime, whatever you like to call it, and her name, if you don't know already, is Shabana Mahmood. Yes, Shabana Mahmood is the British Justice Secretary at the moment. Make of that what you will. But she has come out with plans and a suggestion that trial by jury is to be removed from a lot of people who are awaiting trial. Now, this isn't happening immediately. She has requested that Sir Brian Levison does a review. So she's commissioned a review to look into what can be done to remove trial by jury, because there is an artificial problem that is being created, and that is the number of people awaiting trial for criminal prosecutions is going up and up and up, and has been doing since 2019. Now, part of that is because of COVID, but also part of that is because the Tories, the fake Conservatives before Labour, and of course they're all part of the Uniparty, they closed down nearly half of the courts in England and Wales. So over the period 2010 to 2020, and these are figures from the Bar Council, they said that 239 courts were closed in that period of time. So, of course, the number of days, of sitting days that judges can have has obviously gone down vastly because physical courts were closed. Now, just anecdotally, the first place I ever stood for Parliament in 2015 was Camberwell and Peckham. Camberwell Crown Court was well known. It was one of the largest, most active courts in London, but it was closed down. And I think it's been used for redevelopment to build some horrible tower blocks, as far as I can tell. The police station was also closed and refurbished and sold and changed, converted to housing units. And this is what the fake Conservatives did over a long period of time. They closed down police stations, they closed down courts, and a lot of them in nice old buildings. Camberwell wasn't a nice old building, but some of them were converted into luxury homes, and so they made some money out of that. But of course, in doing so, you're hollowing out the judicial system, and you're reducing the number of places where trials can actually take place. So this is an artificially created problem, and now we have an artificial solution which the globalists love, which they want, which is to get rid of trial by jury, and ultimately just have someone, they can accuse someone of something, they come before a judge, and then they can be thrown into prison without a jury trial. And of course, this is a fundamental part of our heritage and our culture, our customs, our way of doing things. We have trial by jury. It comes from England. And in England and Wales, we still have the safeguards from the Magna Carta of 1215 of the 13th century. Article 39 of the Magna Carta says that no free man may be punished but by lawful judgment of his peers. So we have trial by jury ingrained in our processes, in due process, for over 800 years in England and Wales. And that must remain in our nation, and it's something that's good for all other nations to take on as well. Of course, Anglo-Saxon countries around the world have trial by jury, and you hope that this is a safeguard for most cases where the state cannot just accuse someone of something and then put them away. They have to be brought to trial before a jury of the defendant's peers who can then judge him or her. And they can make a decision and come to a decision which is the opposite of what the judge says, which is the opposite of what the state or the government wants, so that we have that safeguard against the state having complete totalitarian, authoritarian control. So when someone says they want to get rid of trial by jury, that is a very, very dangerous warning sign that this is a tyrannical totalitarian regime, and it must be resisted with everything that we have. So the thing is here, the figures of the numbers of people awaiting trial that have been accused of something by the Crown Prosecution Service, by the police, obviously acting on behalf of the state. And a lot of those people will have committed crimes, of course, but some of them may not have committed crimes, which is why they need trial by jury. But at the moment, there are 73,000 cases awaiting trial in England and Wales. Now, that's up from 38,000 in 2019. So the number of cases awaiting trial has nearly doubled in 5 years. Now, some of that was to do with the whole COVID era, which was really not, I'm going to say, not handled well. It was handled exactly how the government and the globalists wanted it to be handled, which was to cause chaos and undermine our customs, our culture, things which are good. So, trial by jury was suspended in England and Wales for 2 months from March to May 2020. In Scotland, which has a different system, Scotland is on Roman law rather than common law. It would be good for Scotland to change that and to come into common law itself, but that's another issue. But in Scotland, trial by jury was suspended for much longer, from March 2020 to the beginning of 2021. So then you had nearly a year where trial by jury was suspended in Scotland and came back after a lot of protests, quite rightly. But yeah, the COVID era allowed the globalist cabal to undermine a lot of these things which serve the people, to try to get rid of them or undermine them or dilute them, to put in things that they want which will enslave the people. And one of the things they wanted to do was get rid of or weaken trial by jury, or make it so that there is less trial by jury, just take a few cases out and a few more and a few more and a few more. This is a Fabian way of operating. So what the suggestions are, and this Leveson review is going to look at these. There's a number of suggestions on the table. One is that more cases will be heard by magistrates rather than in the Crown Court. Now, magistrates deal with all kinds of smaller criminal cases and civil cases. They deal with things like, if you get accused of a speeding, you get a speeding fine or something. The police say, you were speeding, you owe a fine, or the TV license, company, whatever, the people who look after that and try to extract money and threaten you for not paying a TV license, that they find you, they get your name, they send it to the magistrates' courts, or council tax, things like that. They go to the magistrates' courts. Now, I don't think that that's right, to be honest, because even a small accusation where someone is saying, well, you've done this, you must pay a fine, that should go before a trial by jury. But the thing is, there's so many of these cases that they've said, we're not going to deal with all the cases at the Crown Court where you can have a trial by jury. Some of them are going to go to the magistrates' court. Some of them will be dealt with summary justice. You just pay a fine and then, then that's it. That's what you get with a speeding ticket and points on your license. But one of the proposals is that more cases for things like theft or minor assaults or possession of cannabis will go to the magistrates' courts, and then they will just hear you in a short amount of time and then give you a sentence, give you community service, or send you to prison for a short amount of time to take pressure off the Crown Court. But of course, if the Crown Courts that had been closed hadn't been closed, if there were more judges hearing cases in the Crown Court, then that wouldn't be necessary. We should have more courts, more judges hearing cases with trial by jury rather than sending them down to the magistrates' courts. Now, already the power of magistrates has been increased so that they can send you to prison for longer. So it used to be that the magistrates could impose a maximum prison sentence of 6 months. Now that's gone up to 1 year already. And they're talking about increasing it to 2 years. And I think that's on the table in this Leveson review. So this is then a quadrupling of what used to be the case, which wasn't good anyway, because if you go to prison, if you're up for any kind of charge where a prison sentence might be the penalty for what you've done, that should be heard with a trial by jury. But already they've said, okay, well, smaller sentences, we'll hear them without trial by jury, and then there's a few more, and then a few more, and then a few more. And it's done piecemeal so people don't react and respond with outrage, which is what we should be responding to, because no one should be sent to prison without trial by jury in a fair system. But that's what we have. I mean, magistrates, there are some great magistrates, but there are also some activist magistrates, like there are activist judges and activist police, so you have these activists all over the place. But there are 30,000 magistrates in England and Wales. But they're not. You don't have to have a degree in law to become a magistrate. You do some courses and you're vetted and so on. You can become a magistrate, rather than if you're an actual judge. You have all the training in the law and so on. You have to be a barrister first and all this kind of thing. Not that means that you're not an activist, but it does mean that you know a bit more about the law. Although these days I wonder, with some of the judgments coming out, with some of these people who have sent people to prison for a long time for posting things on social media. I mean, those people shouldn't be judges, because they are bastardizing the law for their own ends, for the ends of cultural Marxist ideology. Is absolutely wrong. But the number of judges in the country is far fewer than the number of magistrates. This is a figure I got, I think, again from the Law Society. 3,483 court judges is the number of judges that we have in England and Wales. So about 3,500. And not all of them will be dealing with criminal cases, because more than half of them will be just solely dealing with civil cases and disputes between businesses and property owners, property sellers, things like this, and family issues and things, divorce. So half of them or more will be dealing with that. So that means there's only about, I don't know the exact number, but fewer than 1,500 judges will be dealing with criminal cases, whether that's in the Crown Court or the Appeal Court or the Supreme Court. So there are not that many judges to deal with all of these cases and all of the backlog that we have. And the backlog is going up and up and up. And that then is this artificial problem that they're now proposing. The solution is to get rid of trial by jury for a lot of trials. So the second thing they're saying is, the more cases should be heard by the magistrates rather than in the Crown Court. And the third thing, the solution is that they're proposing that there will be an intermediate court set up, something between the Magistrates' Court and the Crown Court, which will have a judge and two magistrates hearing a case and then judging and deciding on it themselves. But that's not a jury of one's peers. That's a trial by a judge and two magistrates, which for something they're proposing that this will be set up for crimes where there is a penalty of up to 2 years. Rather than sending them all those things to the magistrates' courts, they will set up an intermediate court for hearing crimes with a penalty of between 1 and 2 years in prison, and so to take that out of jury trial. Again, this is very dangerous because, number one, that shouldn't happen in the first place. If you're going to prison, as I said, if there's a possibility of going to prison, you should be judged by a trial within a trial with a jury of one's peers. And the second thing, this is a creeping expansion of cases going to non-jury trials for criminal cases. Up to 2 years is what they're suggesting. Then it will be 3 years and 5 years and so on and so on. Now, I was shocked to hear that there were 17,000 people on remand awaiting trial. And some of the trials in the backlog are not going to be heard for 2.5 years. Some trials are only scheduled for 2027. There's such a backlog. So if you're unfortunate enough to have been accused of a crime, and the police say, or you go to initial hearing, and the judge says, well, you're going to be remanded in prison until your trial, like Lucy Letby was. And, that's a whole other issue. I think the trial there was absolutely dreadful, and the jury was, vital information was withheld from the jury, so she was found guilty when she's innocent. That's a whole other thing. But people like her are held on remand for years before their trial, which is appalling. People should not be held on remand for more than a certain amount of time. If they're on remand, the trial must come very quickly, because someone may be innocent and held on remand. We presume that we have the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Now, of course, you hope that people who are accused of a crime by the police and the Crown Prosecution Service are guilty of the crime, and they're on remand because they should be on remand. And probably the majority of those 17,000 people have committed a crime, and the police are just building a case against them. But knowing how the police are operating today, there will be a significant number of those people who are innocent, and they're being held on remand for 2 or 3 years before they get a trial because of all the backlog. And that is just an utterly appalling state of affairs. That is not justice. And Shabana Mahmood talks about justice for the victims, but justice for the victims should not come at the cost of holding someone on remand for 3 years when they may be innocent. So, but then again, and this is then being used to push for the case that they need to get rid of trial by jury. So everything has been collapsed here, and the end result is that they want to get this summary justice, probably up for everything, like they had in the places where communism took hold, the Soviet Union and places like that. You don't get a trial by jury. You didn't get a trial by jury in the Soviet Union. You were accused of something, and then they send you to the gulag, and that's that. And that is what the cabal wants to set up here. They want to destroy our culture, our safeguards, and be able to accuse someone of something, whether they're guilty or not, and just arrest them, drag them before the courts, and send them to the gulag. And we need to resist this, because this is a big step in undermining trial by jury. And it's happening with this Labour government, Starmer regime. But the groundwork has been put in with the fake Conservatives, who closed nearly half the courts in England and Wales. So this is how the two cheeks of the same backside in the Uniparty act together. One does one thing and then another does another thing, and it looks like they're disconnected. What the fake Conservatives are going to come out? They're going to come out and say, oh, this is terrible. Oh, you're undermining trial by jury, when they did the groundwork for this. So you can't trust them either. They're both the same, and they're both acting, in a play together to undermine our culture, our heritage, and our way of life, our way of doing things, and due process in England and Wales. So this needs to be resisted. Unfortunately, we've got another 4.5 years of this terrible Labour regime, unless, 80 of the Labour MPs who have been injected with experimental injections, fall over and die, which they might do. They might, some of these people might succumb, because there are all kinds of, adverse health events that happen from things that they were injected with. So, if that would mean that they'd lose their majority. But unless, 80 Labour MPs suddenly pass away, we're going to have this Labour government for a while. Hopefully less than 4.5 years. I hope something will happen. Maybe there'll be a split in the Labour government. Maybe some of them who are concerned about what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Syria, will stand up and walk out. Who knows? But unless that happens, we've got another 4.5 years of the red part of the Uniparty actively and quickly trying to undermine our culture and bring in summary communist style judgments on people, and which is very, very dangerous for ordinary people. So we need to shout about this and say, no, we are not going to accept you undermining trial by jury and taking the right to trial by jury away from people who are accused of a crime. You need to introduce more trial by jury so that people are accused of, not paying their council tax, for example. Have a trial by jury rather than court just making an order against them for the bailiffs to come round when they don't even have a chance to, put their case before a jury of their peers. This is wrong, and we need more trial by jury, not less. So this is another thing to add to the dozens of dreadful things that the Labour Starmer regime are already doing on the foundations of the dreadful fake Conservatives as well. Please come and join me in the Heritage Party to restore trial by jury if we can get in government in 2029. Keep fighting, everyone. Thanks for listening, and God bless you all.